Hello, everybody. Optimism Revisited. We live in such a gloomy world. It sure feels that way most of the time. At the very least, we are certainly surrounded by noise that, let me put it this way, isn't so uplifting. We are left to our own devices to navigate a path towards joy, peace, and optimism outside of the suffocating city limits of our public conversation. Fortunately for most people, we know how to find our way. And I am beyond grateful that I most often manage to do just that. I think we all need optimism. It's a key ingredient in what brings us energy. And lack of optimism is like a drag on how we feel. When I don't feel optimistic, I sleep poorly, I eat poorly, I'm less tolerant, and my energy levels are just all around down. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy of sorts. We are how we feel. My respect and desire for optimism is also why I love entrepreneurship so much, and entrepreneurs, and perhaps politics to a lesser degree. In general, I prefer to be with people who do more than people that just say. Opinions are overrated, actions and results underrated, at least in our political discourse. Entrepreneurs often set out to do things others haven't done. They are dreamers, but they move their feet. They initiate, they create. They are truly in the arena. And they're almost always met with skepticism, cynicism, negativity, and rejection. And yet, their vision keeps them going and propels them to achieve what others deemed impossible. This is also why I'm so committed to a purpose bigger than ourselves. It's with the power of purpose we get the wings and the fuel that can take us to unimaginable places. I've written many times about the importance of optimism. In this one from July 2020 called We Are What We Believe, and then there's a post almost a year later called In Pursuit of Optimism, and of course another one from a year ago called Why I Am an Optimist. I've linked to them in the newsletter if you want to revisit them. So this is not new territory, but it sure is an important domain. That's why I spend time digging, searching, and trying to find people with a more optimistic lens. As usual with my newsletter, there were triggers that sent me here this week. I read a few things that I will link to below that inspired me and pushed me to devote yet another post to the topic of optimism. I've also mentioned Nick Cave before. Nick is an Australian singer, songwriter, poet, lyricist, author, screenwriter, composer, and occasional actor. He writes a newsletter where he responds beautifully to many types of questions. His writing is poetic, penetrating, and at least to me, almost always uplifting. Here is how he responded to someone asking him why he is an optimist. Here's a part of his response. Is the world heading for disaster? I suppose so. We are constantly, relentlessly told as much. Am I hopeful for its future? Well, yes, I am. I choose to be an optimist through a kind of necessity, because from my experience, pessimism is a corrosive and damaging position to take, one that casts its shadow over all things, causing a kind of societal sickness, a contaminant that ultimately amplifies and glorifies the problems it professes to abhor. End of quote. The most common objection people might have to optimism is that it comes across as superficial, shallow, or even naive. But optimism is not the same as being unsympathetic or unaware of human suffering or problems. There is a very fine line between optimism and ignorance. I get that. But optimism to me is the commitment to finding solutions to problems, even or particularly when faced with incredible challenges. Neither optimism nor hope is a guarantee that things will be great. That's an illusion, a panacea. That has nothing to do with living. First, we all die. Second, we all suffer. That's inherent in the human condition. As Clint Eastwood said in the movie Rookie, if you want a guarantee, buy a toaster. Optimism is more of an attitude and a posture for how to navigate through life. It's our human superpower, and it is also an absolute necessity for anything good to happen. We can't build, lead, or design anything with a negative attitude. You won't attract followers, you won't attract investors, and you won't overcome the many challenges any journey entails. We are stuck in a perverse competition for negative news. It's like the only thing that attracts attention is the misery of other people. And guess what? The more misery people are searching for, the more misery people will find. Sooner or later, we start believing that the whole world consists of mean-spirited, miserable people. But yet, we all know deep inside that is so far from the reality we experience daily. I strongly recommend that you read the following short pieces. They're compelling and worth reflecting on. Our media is biased towards negativity and sensationalism, but as usual, we have the power. We can and should unsubscribe, unclick, and reject media that lacks balance and nuance. We would be better off if we all did. So here are two wonderful answers from Nick Cave, short ones. First is the one above on why he's an optimist, and the second one is an answer on why he isn't angry. Second one is a good article from my Swedish friends at Warp News, who are dedicated to the very mission of rebalancing media bias towards more positive news. It's called, Does Washington Post Really Drive Away Darkness? And lastly, Anand Girdharadas is someone who I know many readers of this newsletter typically would disagree with. And precisely for that reason, his post is worth reading, since it speaks more to the posture of our conversation than any particular desired policy or idea. I'm sharing that here too. Ignore labels of left and right for just a moment and simply feel what he is saying. It's about using honey more than vinegar in our public discourse. It really is the right idea for any productive relationship. And after all, we are all in this together, and we have to find ways to coexist peacefully, joyfully, and happily. Thank you for making me optimistic. Please do what you can to share the good news. Like many powerful laws we have witnessed in the past few decades, like Moore's law on transistors, Gilder's law on bandwidth, and Metcalfe's law on network, the law of optimism has something crucial in common with those technology laws. When we share optimism, it grows exponentially. It's the kind of infection of affection we would really benefit from. It's truly powerful. Have a great week.